Welcome to the Fayetteville Fire Podcast, where we talk about all things fire-related, safety tips, and things that are happening in our can-do city. I'm Don Cheetah, Captain Community Risk Reduction, and I'm your host for the podcast. According to the National Fire Protection Association statistics, there was an annual average of 48,530 home heating fires between 2014 and 2018. These fires resulted in an estimated 500 civilian deaths, 1,350 civilian injuries, and $1.1 billion in direct property damage. We'll talk more about this later during our safety message of the month. So today we're going to talk about with the folks with planning and research and all that goes into data collection and other things in the office. I'd like to welcome our special guests today, Battalion Chief Mike Autry and Samantha Gossard.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing great.
So, planning and research. That's a fancy title.
Yeah, or Office of Strategic Planning and Research, or Research and Planning, however you want to call it. I say sometimes we call it research then plan, but we call it planning and research.
So, tell a little bit about the office.
So, right now there's myself, which battalion chief, that accreditation manager, planning and research manager. We have one captain assigned, Captain Jeremy Johnson. He is he does GIS. He gathers data from RMS and also helps with our technology side, where CAD and MCTs, mobile computer terminals, for those who don't know what we're talking about on the fire trucks. He helps manage that. And then we have Samantha Gossard, who helps look after our records management system, incident reports, pull in information for whatever need we may have, and the public information side of that when people need information from call reports and such as that.
And call reports, that's a big thing, isn't it, Samantha?
It sure is.
People want to know what's going on.
Yeah, fortunately, unfortunately, we run a lot of fire calls in the city, and of course, for every call that they go on, there is a fire report. So people need that for all sorts of different reasons, and I'm the one.
Right. Insurance investigators, insurance claims, or just nosy.
Yep. Overall, a lot of people from universities doing a lot of research as well, trying to find trends in our data as well.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
All right. So we talk about data. We live in a data-driven society, so to speak now, that everything's got to have data to back it when we do something. So, living in a data-driven society, what goes into collecting the fire department data?
So there's multiple aspects. We get our information from not just the reports we run as far as the entries of reports, but also from the computer-aided dispatch system. We get the times, the information, stuff like that. There's so many dynamics to that. Everybody wants to know why something happens. We are definitely data driven. Totally. It was something I was just reading earlier prior to coming in here that we use. I forget how much data is consumed in 2020, but it was like take a 1 gigabyte thumb drive and lay it end to end was 160 million football fields long. Compared to when I was young, I'm an old guy. I didn't even know what a thumb drive was. So we tend to gather from multiple resources when it comes to that. Sometimes it's even, through investigation reports or whatever that may drive data for whatever we're looking for. So there's dozens and dozens of ways that we actually pull information from. And what goes into collecting from it is, basically what are we looking for? Just like an incident report, when it's put in, the accuracy of that information coming in is how accurate the information is coming out. So we strive to have a good quality assurance program, quality checks on these incidents to make sure that we're given the correct information when somebody's asked for it. And that's not only publicly, but we do a lot internally with that information.
Yeah.
To add on that, I was going to say, as soon as somebody picks up the phone to call 911, we are collecting data. We have all that information of what is said to the dispatcher so they can figure out what type of call it is and what kind of apparatuses and crew members are needed to assist on that type of call. And then when the call gets sent to the fire station. There's all sorts of data there as far as like what time they roll out of the station. We have GPS of how long it takes them to get to that address. And then on that call, they collect data, of course, for all the people who are there and the type of incident it is. And then on the back end, sometimes I have to go back and, hey guys, somebody said their car was next to a car on fire. We need to go back and clean up data and make sure we have everything, and just be able to, the more we collect, the more we can research and help out.
And I think it'd be fair to say, so at the top of the mountain, so to speak, you got National Fire Protection Association, which they're basically collecting data on what types of emergency calls are going on. And then that's how they develop different prevention or code books for fire code enforcement, building codes. And then it trickles down to us where we're just trying to make ourselves better, I guess. You know, how can we improve in this area or that area? How can we get more people on the scene? How can we get to the scene quicker? I would be fair to say all that goes into.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
And there's other things. We use census data. You know, I was borrowing some DOT maps and looking at those, and looking at households who had fewer cars than others. What does that mean on the EMS side? Do we get more calls there due to more of an emergent need for transport to a medical facility versus some people who have multi-car vehicles in their home? Those things, we look at them. We look at them, and what does that mean for us? So that data is collected. We also use historical data. We don't gather many shipboard accident data sets because we don't have a shipping industry in Fayetteville. So, and not to sound funny, but when we're looking at, in a nutshell, what's best for the citizens and the people visiting our town, we need to know what the priorities are, what we're looking at. So data drives us to tailor our services, so to speak, to what are the all hazard needs for our community.
And I think people may not understand. You and I work together closely, your office and myself, with community risk reduction and identifying what issues we got in what areas of our city and how we can best manage them. And some of the data, it leads us outside of the fire department with other partners within the city. One of the demographics we talked about, and you just talked about again, is lack of transportation. And we notice we have a trend of a lot of EMS calls in that area because people need a way to get to a doctor, so to speak, and that's the only way to get there is by ambulance. It's something that we work with, maybe the Fayetteville area transit system. Can we get a bus route getting more close to that area or something? Would that be fair to say that?
Yeah, we try to dial into as many of the geolocations we can. It even comes into play that data drives where our fire stations are. And we can get into further that with ISO, but also a big part of our accreditation piece is measuring where the optimal response areas are for these fire stations and the types of equipment, the number of people assigned, their specialties. All this data drives where we're at when it comes to a brand new Station 4 that's being built on Bragg Boulevard. That was a data-driven decision. Of course, you have to have land. You have to have the ability to build a station. But it still does drive where the optimal location for a fire station and their apparatus are.
Yeah, not only where the fire stations are, but where a truck company is versus a squad versus an engine company, heavy rescue companies. I think that all comes into play with that.
It does. So
you mentioned accreditation. So first off, for those that don't understand or quite know what is accreditation?
It's not a certification. I think that's the first thing to eliminate. And this is from a guy who rode a fire truck from a long time. Looking at it, it's a process. This is a continuous process of improvement. If you were to go look for a school of higher education today, ideally you would find an accredited university, and you would look for that. They're validated. They're verified and validated. So our accreditation looks at 11 categories, and those 11 categories, they're also reviewed by peers. They're industry best practices. we continuously are working to improve each piece of this, and there's multiple segments of that, in accreditation. That's anything from we have a standard of cover that's adopted by us, which says EMS calls will have this, and this is the incidents we respond to. This is how it lays out. That's a standard, but that's all based off of a community risk assessment, which is done through each accreditation cycle, which is 5 years long, and we're on our 4th accreditation cycle, which is a large number. The 4th accreditation is a pretty high number as far as going through. We don't see a lot of agencies that there's quite a few that are 3rd and 4th, but we're one of the few that's going for the 4th right now in the United States. So we're very proud to say that we're one of those agencies, but there's a lot of dynamics to that.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick before this podcast. I've looked into it. There are 310 accredited agencies in the U.S., and with that, it means that 13% of the population is protected by an accredited fire department.
It's a very, very small amount.
Yes.
And we had Chief Hill on here last month's podcast, and one of the things that we were proud of is not only accredited, but ISO Class 1 rated, which is a whole different thing is ISO to accreditation.
Yeah, and if we talk about ISO, ISO Insurance Services Organization. When we talk accreditation versus ISO, accreditation's all hazards. When we talk about it, it's everything. When we talk about ISO, we're looking at what they call the PPC, Public Protection Classification, in which is fire only. So, and it's an industry standard. It's not specific to Fayetteville. It could be the largest department in the United States, or it could be the smallest department. They have to meet the same criteria. And of those, Class 10 being the worst, Class 1 being the best, we're very proud to say that we're an accredited ISO Class 1 and have been for quite some time now. And what that means for our community when it comes to savings is we're giving them the best opportunity to save on homeowners insurance rates, because most insurance companies look at multiple things: zip codes, history, how close your fire hydrant is to your home, a lot of other things. But the fire service as whole, ISO grades us in 4 categories. And of those 4 categories overall, we rated as a Class 1. So we're very proud of that.
And I think it'd be fair to say when you're ISO, you got a standard sheet, how much equipment you carry on a unit, different units, and how many fire hydrants you got in an area, distance to fire hydrants. A lot of them things play into ISO, into your insurance rating. That accreditation is more expanded, and it's more of a, how would we say this? The accreditation is more of a self improving piece. Here's where we at. Here's where we want to go. These are our goals. And then after 5 years, do we reach these goals? And now here's the next 5 years of goals we want. And it's a continuing assessment of ourselves. Would that be fair to say on that?
Yeah, and they're both assessments. I look at them as all a way of life. Accreditation is this continuous improvement. ISO is that this is the way we live. If we have a firefighter gets 240 hours of training a year, they've met the max as far as the goal. That's the maximum they'll give you credit for. We shoot for that every year, whatever firefighter here. Equipment replacement comes in with ISO. Engines are a mile and a half. Truck companies are 2.5 miles apart, road miles. So when we measure for our accreditation piece, we look at times. So we look at how quick you get out the door is probably the first thing. Our minimum expectation is, a roll time of 1:30 after dispatch. And why is that important? What's the difference? So the times are something that are looked at a little bit with ISO. They looked at how fast you can get this number to handle the fire job. But with accreditation, we continuously work to improve those times. And, part of that is like call processing time. So, Chief Hill was our first accreditation manager. And so it's kind of funny because as me coming in as the new kid on the block in accreditation last year and talking to a guy who knows the ins and outs, can be kind of challenging. But, one of the things they done in there was cut well over a minute off the call processing time by how we started measuring, going back to the top of our questions, measuring the data. How do we improve this? So a minute saved in call processing is a minute quicker to a patient who needs the care, someone who has a fire, someone who's been in a vehicle accident, or any of those calls. So we still measure that data, and we still expect, these top times. We set a benchmark that we would like to be on each category. ISO doesn't look at anything hazmat. They don't look at EMS. They don't look at rescue. So accreditation does. It looks at every hazard. And we define those. We define what the expectations are in our standard of cover.
Fair enough. And, for those out there listening to say, well, what's the difference 30 seconds to a minute? A room and content, a fire in a bedroom can go from just that room and content, so to speak, to a outside of room getting into other areas of the house in a matter of that 1 minute. So
terrifying, really.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we talk about, the first fire engine getting on the scene with a complement of people who can complete the task. And we say, our goal is to get you in there from the time the call is received by you till you get on the scenes 5 minutes and 12 seconds or less. Well, that was not a shot in the dark of, hey, we got that. That's a study. That was actually a NIST study, and NFPA says that flashover, from the time something happens, that catastrophic flashover fire could happen in this window. And the best measure we could say for us after using all these studies was that first unit gets there, we may be able, that's our best chance of saving a life and stopping fire spread, which helps us with ISO because it gets us those complement of people that they're looking for in a certain amount of time too.
Yeah, and when we're talking flashover fire, we're talking going from a trash can burning to full room involvement. And, on the investigation side, we've done a lot of study and training with this, and you're talking 5.5 minutes with modern furniture to go from a wastebasket fire to a full room involvement, basically everything burning. So you talked about different times. For those of you who don't know out there, I think our from dispatch to on the truck rolling is still 1:30. Yes. So those of you who don't understand out there, if you wake up in the middle of the night, suddenly to get fully dressed, get out your door and get in your vehicle and start rolling down your driveway in 1:30.
It's pretty quick.
Yeah, I tell people, I used to tell my wife, hey, let's set an alarm clock every 15 minutes and go off, jump up, get dressed, go out to the car, drive around the block. You get canceled from the call, go back, lay down, do it again. Kind of how I felt last night. But so we have those, and it's something we monitor, we track. It's in our annual reports. It's in everybody gets a weekly or daily report on how they done. So we measure that constantly because we know that's one of the most important pieces. If we can't get there in a timely manner, in a safe manner, of course, but if we're not getting there out the door first and then get there safely, we can't do the best service to our citizens that we possibly can.
Absolutely. And you brought up another thing. Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was just going to say, to piggyback off of just the, dispatch to getting out the door time, things like that, it also go into, we're planning on building more stations. So, okay, we want to make sure when we build this new station that we don't put the bunk room, more than 1:30 walk on the other side of where the apparatus is. So it's just, as I've moved into this office, I think those are all the very small, interesting things where you don't realize where the data is showing that it's so valuable.
Yeah, just travel distance from bed to truck.
Yes.
If you got to go down a long hallway, or if you're upstairs and got to go downstairs because you don't have a fire pole or something to slide down, it right. All adds into it. Very good point. And you mentioned something else you were going. So you said annual report.
Yeah. So
talk about the annual report and where that really.
So basically, when I look at annual report, I was like, well, it's like the yearbook of what happened. Through School of Hard Knocks last year, learned that we have some great graphic folks here in the city to help me put together a really nice looking document. But basically, what it does, it lets us know, our performance. It builds credibility. I'm giving somebody a view of, here's how we done. Here's how many calls we had. We'll break down the number of calls. We'll break down our budget. We break down our staffing. We'll have milestones in there. So basically, when you see this annual report, some folks have put a lot of work into putting it together to show you last year's 2022. We'll be working on 2023 very soon.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Along with a lot of other things, the annual compliance report, which is something we provide to CFAI and CIPSI, which is saying, hey, we're meeting our goals, or are we meeting our goals? We do program appraisals every year too. So all that is to let our stakeholders know, which are our citizens, people own businesses, people traveling in town, our elected body, and of course us. Where do we stand? Where have we been? We had 26,000 calls last year. We typically run about 67% of EMS. If we seen an uptick in that 1 year, why? We knew COVID year was a huge change because we had to do some things differently response-wise. But if we see, and you're a CRR guy, if we see an uptick of illegal burns and they're spread into a wildland fire or grass fire, then we'll track that data. We'll show it in our annual report, but we also need to have a plan on how we're going to fix this. How are we addressing this?
And that's the fire service as a whole now, and it's a mandatory part of accreditation process now is the community risk assessments and the community risk reduction programs. False fire alarms. We ran 2,500 false fire alarms right in that ballpark last year. So that's one of the things I look at with the data you help provide me is where are we having these false alarms? Why are we having the false alarms? And what message do we have to get out to reduce these false fire alarms? It might be a citizen noticing a citizen has 3 smoke alarm activations, and you go look, and all 3 of them were because shower steam. So part of that process is, okay, let's get with the citizen and have them move their smoke alarm away from the bathroom door. So, and you said the other part of the annual appraisal, and I think this is the one that I don't say anything's more important than the other, but presenting to our elected body, our city council persons, and the ones that are going to provide us the funding to continue. That plays a big part, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. So one thing is budgeting. So everybody either wants a raise or wants to know where their stuff's coming from, or we do a performance-based budget. And what does that mean? So if you were to pull a copy of the City of Fayetteville's budget right now and you look at the fire department piece, it's going to talk about response times. It's going to talk about the number of fires. It's going to talk about property saved versus loss. And last year we saved 96% property save loss ratio, a little over 96%. So if we saw those numbers going down, what's your plan to fix that? Do we budget more for that? Do we put resources there to fix this? Just like I said earlier, if we have a smoke detector, smoke alarm program, my CRR, Chief McClam, is smoke alarm.
Yeah, but, smoke alarm. It's been beat into me.
Yeah. So, but we have this program. So, if we identify, we document in reports, did they have a working smoke detector or not? That's data we pull. But that's also in performance-based. Do we need more money? Do we need more money to provide smoke alarms for our people, our citizens that don't have what you and I would say, I can't lay my head down at night knowing you didn't have one. We want that. So we use that data in our budgeting. There's so many pieces, and it's in our PDF document. You can look at it all day long. It's an interesting read if you really want to know.
So yeah, there's a lot that goes into data. It's more than just budget, or just not one piece. It's multi pieces, and the end state, I think it's fair to say, is just to make us better, more proficient and better in what we do.
Yeah, continuous improvement. That's all we do. That's all we strive to do these days, get better. That's
it. Well, I want to thank you, Chief Autry, Samantha. I appreciate you both coming in, and I hope our folks understand more of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks.
All right, back to our safety tip of the month, home heating safety. Space heaters account for 40% of home heating fires, while fireplaces or chimneys account for an additional 30%. Some of the things that lead to this are a failure to clean our heating equipment, like the creosote buildup in your chimney, and heat sources that are a heat source that is too close to combustible materials. Some things you can do. Heating equipment and chimneys should be cleaned and inspected every year by a qualified professional. Anything that can burn at least 3 feet away from all heating equipment, including furnaces, fireplace, wood stoves, and space heaters. Create a 3-foot kid-free zone around any open fires or space heaters. Make sure your space heaters are in good working order and used in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Make sure you turn off them portable heaters when leaving a room or going to bed. Fireplaces should have a sturdy screen to stop sparks from flying into the room. Ashes should be cool before putting them into a metal container, which should be placed outside at least 10 feet away from your home. And if you have any type of fuel-burning equipment, make sure you have a carbon monoxide alarm in your home, and you want to test these monthly right along with your smoke alarms. Thanks for joining us on Fayetteville Fire Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to Radio Fayetteville on your favorite streaming platforms to listen to all our podcasts. Next time, we'll be talking to the Fayetteville Fire Department's fire and life safety educators. Till then, be safe.